Today's Memorial Day. It's the most sacred day in the history of our country. It's to honor those that gave the ultimate, their lives, for our freedom. Let's be sure and remember them today and honor them. God bless America. This is Ken Hance, best storyteller in Texas, saying today, it's better to have one day with a great teacher than 1,000 days studying on your own.
A lot of good teachers out there.
You know, and this is the end of the year, and a lot of them have had a big impact. I think back to I had first and second and third grade teachers had an impact on me, plus the ones in high school, but I had a positive impact. And I've quoted him many times before. Mr. J.O. Seal was the ag teacher, and he always said one of his favorite sayings was that if you cut a piece of rope or wire or string too long, there's nothing you can do about it. But the government always says, if you cut it too short, you can always splice it. He thought that was government policy. Just cut it too short and splice it, try to splice it.
One of my favorite sayings of yours from a teacher was an English teacher about communication.
There was a professor at Texas Tech, said that in communication, oral or written, it's not important that people understand you. It's got to be so clear and concise they do not misunderstand you. And I've always told my employees that, and that is so important. That's the reason lots of times I'll tell somebody what I want them to do, and then I'll say, what did I tell you? I want to make sure we're on the same page, because sometimes people can hear you, but that doesn't mean they're listening. It's important that they listen and get a grasp of what you're trying to say.
Someone on your staff, I remember you told the story once, it was replying to a constituent, and it was like a 5-page letter.
Yeah, there's a guy that worked for me. He had like 6 degrees, and he had 5 pages, and it just, I knew the guys that had written me a letter. There was about 5 or 6 of them had signed a letter, and there were some farmers from Freona, Texas, and I said, if we send them this letter, they're going to get in their pickup and come get me. They're going to say something's happened to him. We need to go up and rescue him. And I read the letter that they'd written us, and so I changed the letter, the draft. We'd have staff draft a letter, and then I'd always approve it or change it. 99% of the time, I'd change it a little. But I changed it. And it said, dear, 5 of them, I agree with you. I agree with you. 4 words, 1 sentence. Now, is that going to make them mad when they open that letter? Oh, he agrees with us. They're going to say, how smart is that guy? And if I disagree, and unfortunately, I don't agree with you on this, but there'll be other times we'll agree and something like that. But I agree with you, and it don't have to get into a long letter. But when you give somebody a 5-page letter, it's just like I ask people from time to time that are wanting to be in a federal judge or federal prosecutor, do you believe in the death penalty? And I've always found the longer the answer, the less they believe. The right answer is yes, in my opinion. And some would disagree with that. But if you're going to have an answer it short and to the point. And Dr. Davis was the guy that said, Dr. Kenneth Davis said that in communication, it's not important that they understand you. It's got to be so clear and so concise they cannot misunderstand you. That's an excellent saying. Excellent.
When a candidate for the federal judge position replies yes, is that enough of an answer for you, or do you want?
Yeah, I mean, what else? They either do or they don't. If they say yes, that makes me,
where they stand.
They know where they stand. Or if they say no. But when they give these 5 or 10 minute answers, their yes is not a yes and their no is not a no. They're just trying to get out and get everybody a little something. It's kind of like you ask somebody, what's your favorite color? And they say, plaid. They're trying to solve all problems with there'd be a little red in there, it'll be a little black and a little green, and thinking I'll have more colors and I'll pick up his support.
Don't really want to take a strong position.
Yeah,
on that.
I don't want to take a I've used that several times talking to somebody else about them. They say, "What did you think about so and so?" And I'd say, "I just if they'd ask what's your favorite color," the guy would have said plaid. The woman would have said plaid. And today I want to talk a little about presidential trips and foreign policy. President Trump just got back from the Middle East. He visited Saudi Arabia, one of the main allies there, and then he also visited Qatar and UAE, both very powerful, very rich countries. And he was criticized by some who say, why didn't he go to Israel? Well, Netanyahu met with him. He was the first president or world leader to meet with him when he got reelected this last term. So he'd already met with him, and he didn't need to, be going there. And so he went to the Middle East and trying to do deals, and he has a million things going. I mean, if you're working for him, you're going to be working on something. But I think that goes back to his history as a deal maker and promoter in New York. He'd have, a few people on his staff trying to buy a casino and a few people trying to buy some wetlands and build a hotel. And he always had a lot of balls up in the air. And he's been able to do that as president. And they really started off fast this year. He got his people that I think that he feels are loyal to him and that he has a lot of confidence in. And last time he took some people that he didn't know that well, or some of them he hadn't even met until he appointed them to a cabinet position. And they weren't on the same page with him, and some of them didn't work out. But he had with this latest group, I think Rubio's done a great job, and the president's pleased with him. That's quite evident, and that he's getting the people around him that he knows, feels comfortable with, and they feel comfortable with him. But the Middle East, he's also trying to figure out, what are we going to do when the war with the Israelis and Hamas and West Gaza, when that's over? How are you going to rebuild it? And I think that he was talking to Saudi Arabia and UAE and Qatar about how they would help participate in rebuilding it, because it's going to have to be rebuilt. I don't know why, they elected Hamas and when they did, Hamas made it apparent that from the word go, they were out to kill all the Jews. And that's not a good foreign policy. It doesn't help you. And so they had that raid on October 7th. In the essence of it was that the Israelis are going to hit back, and they're not going to stop until they destroy whoever they've got. They're not looking for an exit plan. Mm-hmm. And so there will be a time that will come to an end, and then the question will be, will the U.S. show leadership in trying to put things together and get an answer? And same thing with Russia and Ukraine. And Putin has not been as good to deal with as I think that the president thought he was going to be. But he runs a risk of, Putin runs a risk of getting the president crossways with him. And, Zelensky with Ukraine has seemed to have mended fences. And so, I don't know what's going to happen there. But that's, that's a beautiful country. And for it to just consistently be bombed over and over is very difficult. Hopefully they can get something worked out. But with Trump, he also had thoughts about Syria. And when he was there, he called the Syrian president, the new president, and talked to him. And Syria's had sanctions on them for decades from the U.S. And it looks like they're lifting the sanctions, and which would help the economy in Syria. Mm-hmm. So he's trying to make sure the Syrians understand, if you work with us instead of the Iranians, you're going to be a lot better off. Also, he's let the Iranians know he wants to talk to them. He's considering putting sanctions back on them, which was devastating to their economy, and he's trying to work out something to stop the advancement of nuclear weapons and nuclear energy in Iran, and we'll see what happens on that. But that being in that area, he was trying to settle several of those, and those are very important things that you look at Syria, Iran, and Gaza, just three real problem areas that he had to address. So he's getting things going with them. Saudi Arabia and Qatar and UAE all went out of their way for first-class deal, and I think it was UAE gave U.S. an airplane, and if it's to the U.S., I don't see anything on that rather than a personal gift. But the travels, you go back to 1972. In May, it's May 22nd, 1972, Nixon went to Moscow, and he had meetings. In 1959, he had met in Moscow in a kitchen. They had a great kitchen debate, and Nixon was talking about capitalism and why it was good and how it worked, and Khrushchev was talking about communism and socialist and why that worked. And period of time, it proved who was correct, is Nixon was correct. And I know Nixon was very unpopular and because of Watergate and everything, but he did a lot in foreign policy. And the Soviets were eager to meet with him in May of 72 because in February of 72, Nixon had gone to China. And he went to China and trying to open up relations with Chairman Mao and talked about the world economy and why China needs to play and take place in world economy. My friend Trammell Crow, one of the great real estate persons of all time, went to China for Nixon on some things before that, about 6 months before, and talked to some of their leaders. And they had other people look at China. Ray Kroc had McDonald's, and when he looked at it, he thought, if they just had one hamburger a month, I'd be selling, a lot of hamburgers. Mm-hmm. And it was a new market for the U.S., and for China, it was opening up a new market for them to build things. Like 80-something% of the refrigerators are built in China, and over half of the washers and dryers are built in China. So we have a lot of trade there, and we've got a temporary halt on increasing tariffs, and they finally said at one time, just to show him he was serious about it, Trump set a tariff of 145%. I mean, that'd get their attention. And they finally got it down to 25 or 30, and the U.S. is paying, I think, about 10%. So those things are going to be coming up again in the future, but they'll be dealt with quietly and probably not as big as it was at first because it rattled the markets, and Trump doesn't want to rattle the markets, but he wants to make sure that we get traded with fairly, and reciprocal trade agreements. I introduced a bill in Congress to have reciprocal trade agreements that if you were charging us an average of 10%, then we charge you 10%. If you wanted to go down to 5, we'd go down to 5. If you wanted to go up to 15, we'd go up to 15. So it was something that worked. Now, you have different types of trade on different materials that you look at. But what's happening with trade is that there will be some of these manufacturing jobs that have gone to China will come back to the United States. Mm-hmm. So that should create some jobs.
Do you have any opinion why past presidents haven't tackled this issue?
They didn't want to, and I think a lot of the businesses didn't want them to. They'd rather be paying $1 an hour in Bangladesh or China than having to pay $25 an hour in the United States.
Right.
Transportation cost amounts some, but not much compared to the wages that you're paying. And you look at the maquiladora plants that we have in Mexico, they don't pay anything comparable to what they do in the United States. Right. So they could have cheaper products and sell more of their products. I think that was a big push behind it. You know, the two trips that Nixon had in 1972, February going to China and May going to Soviet Union, really changed the Cold War, and was a big change, and it got China where they were negotiating on a day-to-day and month-to-month basis about producing more goods. It opened up factories for them left and right, and American companies went in there and opened up factories. And of course, some of them learned the hard way. The Chinese stole all their ideas, you know, and they'd buy a 707 and work as hard as possible to take it apart and put it back together again and build something comparable. But the trade agreements that Nixon had and the breaking of the Cold War so that you would have more of an economic basis of doing business together, that was the beginning of the end of the Cold War. And now China has not made any advancements as far as personal freedoms are concerned, but economic freedoms, they've made great strides. In the Soviets, I think what's happened to the Soviets, that their army should have been able to win that Ukraine war in a week or two, and they weren't. And they're caught up in a war, and they're trying to postpone it so they can get more territory. But it shows that their military is not what they led everyone to believe that it was. Our military is head and shoulders above any other military in the world. Absolutely, it's no question. I think that people in Harvard and Columbia are beginning to understand that Trump's going to play hardball with them. And about 25% of their student body are foreign students, and they pay the full ride, and they're paying $70,000, $80,000 a year. And so if they can't get visas, they could take it virtual, I guess, but they can't, they can't be there and be involved in research and things like that. But I think he's trying to get their attention. You need to work with us. And I think that their signal back has been, we never have had to work with anybody, so why should we have to start with you? So it's going to be an all-out, educational war between Trump and higher education on what they're able to do.
Dude, did I understand that whole thing correctly, that basically they've told Harvard they can't allow any more foreign students?
Yes. Wow,
I didn't know the government could do that.
And, well, what they do, they don't sign the visas.
Right.
They can't get in.
Right.
And it has big change. Harvard's got to come to the realization that they're dealing with someone new. This isn't Biden that's depending on somebody at the White House to make the decisions for him. Trump, he shoots from the hip sometimes, but he hits the target when he does. And they're going to have to realize they're going to have to try to get along with him, and they may wind up paying some taxes on their educational foundation, and that have been tax exempt in the past.
Harvard's just sitting there with that huge endowment going, we'll do whatever we want, right?
And, at some point in time, they're going to come to the realization we need to reach some kind of an agreement, and if we do, then maybe we can move forward. I spoke at Lubbock Christian's graduation a couple of weeks ago and enjoyed that, and it's a great university, and I've taught classes there but I told them, if I'm CEO of a Fortune 500 company and they say you can go hire students at Harvard, Columbia, and Lubbock Christian, I'm going to Lubbock Christian because they're not going to be involved in some issue that they're going to be more concerned about the issue, the international issue, than they are making money for me and my business. And those Lubbock Christian kids, they think that, if you get a job with an accounting firm, you're supposed to do accounting. You're not supposed to be doing demonstrations on some issue that's a big topic worldwide. And if you look at Columbia and some of the problems they had, and they didn't react well, they tried to appease the protesters, and you can't do that. You're always going to lose when you try to appease them. I've said this before, that these demonstrators, they take over the dean's office or the president's office, and they camp out on camp. And what they don't understand, the members of Congress don't care. Mm-hmm. Now, there may be some that agree with their idea, and they'll go get on TV speaking to them, encouraging everything. That's not going to, what they're doing on campus is not going to have an impact on how the votes are cast. Do you think Barracio, who's the majority whip in the Senate, represents Wyoming, do you think he cares about some demonstration at Harvard or something? He represents the University of Wyoming, the only school in the state of Wyoming. Mm-hmm. And, he's going to have his allegiance to his constituents in Wyoming. So you've got most of the people, they're in Alabama or even in California, they're not saying that, look, we're going to let the students at Columbia set our foreign policy.
Right.
That's a joke. Mm-hmm. But I think that, certain people convince them this is going to be big if you get out there and demonstrate and get arrested. Just like the congresswoman from Maryland got arrested last week going to an ICE holding center and pushing and shoving, and I think they filed assault on a police officer on her and everything, and she's not going to find that's going to be as funny as possible. And the judge, and I think it was Minnesota, that was trying to show the illegal alien how to get out the back door.
Wisconsin. Yeah.
Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And how to get out the back door so they didn't have to face the, control people and immigration people. And that's not real becoming. You're saying, here you can go out this side door and run and take off. You don't have to worry about it. That's not your finest moment. No. It's not what you want to be known for. But until the day she dies and thereafter, that's what she's going to be known for. Yeah. Period.
Speaking of going outside doors and stuff, did you see the prison escape in Louisiana? All those inmates that got out, cut a hole in the wall.
It had 10.
Yeah.
And they escaped, and I think they've caught 5 or 6 of them, and they've got some others that, it could be they had a prison camp between Dimmitt and Hereford in World War II, and they brought Italian soldiers there, and they had some escape from time to time, but they'd always break back in. It was not easy without knowing the language or being able to get a job or anything. They'd break out and they didn't have any food, and they'd break back in. They'd turn themselves in, and it was pretty funny. A couple of side notes as we go along. There was a deal the other day about the most popular burger in America, and number one was In-N-Out, and that originally started in California. And they cut those potatoes while you're there watching and fry the potatoes, the French fries. But there were 2 others. The second and third was the Habit and the Shake, the Shack Shake.
Oh, the Shake Shack.
Yeah, and I've heard of it, but the Habit, I'd never heard of it.
I haven't either.
And they didn't have McDonald's or Burger King or any of the well-known Jack in the Box or Wendy's, and I think that those they don't care if we're rated number 1 or not.
Right.
They're just trying to sell burgers and run up some revenue. That's what they're trying to do.
In-N-Out figured out the simple menu. You got your single, you got your double.
Yeah,
that's it.
Make it as simple as possible. Don't get them confused. There's a place, Cheesecake factory. I went in there one time with my family, and they had a menu. And my cousin, Fat JB, that owned the Pancake House, he always said, don't make the menu complicated. Make it simple so they can order real fast and get out of there and get somebody sitting at the table. But the Cheesecake Factory, I went in and they had several pages. I'm talking about 6 or 7 pages that you had to look at to see what you wanted. And by the time you got through, you forgot what you'd seen on page 1. You had to go back and look at it again. And I think you want to keep it as simple as possible and let them order and get on about their business. Also, I noticed the best place to get a summer job is Scottsdale and Phoenix. Well, the reason it's so hot. Nobody goes there. Nobody wants to work there when it's 110 or 115. TikTok has shown that, now this is weird, that the new vases or the tanks of your commode, and you put flowers, take the top off the back of the commode and put flowers in there. You know, that's weird. You know, I mean, if I go in somebody's house and use the restroom and they got flowers planted in their commode toilet, I'm going to think these people are unusual. They're strange. Also in Britain, there's a grocery chain that's now doing wedding gifts, and you can get a wedding gift for somebody, and it's useful items. It's toilet paper and paper towels and all kinds of things like that, and canned goods, and that they're trying to get people to put that on their page that, you know, you can get us a gift at such and such grocery store. And also in Great Britain, they're becoming the first country that offers a vaccine for gonorrhea.
Oh, wow.
And you know, I hadn't, you know, ever thought about that, but I don't know what that says about the country that you're offering a vaccine for gonorrhea. You know, have you got your vaccine? You know, and they ask the kids when they return to school, you know, have you got your vaccine? And I wonder if they'll ask about that one. But that was kind of weird, I thought. And also in Europe, there was a story about the French guillotine, and that was used until 1977. They still used it.
Wow.
And they said it was humane because it was painless. You know, and I mean, that blade falls, and it's got all that weight on it, and it just cuts your head off. They put a basket below your head, so that's where it'll fall. And but they quit using it in 1977 was the last person that got killed by the guillotine, and it was on a murder case, somebody out of Tunisia. And then 1981, they outlawed the death penalty altogether, so it became a moot question. Mm-hmm. But I didn't realize that they were still doing that in 77. That's amazing to me.
The guillotine.
Yeah. I was looking at some of the things in the Middle East, and it pointed out that Saddam Hussein, when he ran for re-election, I think it was 2002, that he had his theme song in his election, I will always love you by Whitney Houston. And, you know, of course, he got 100% of the vote. I mean, they tabulate those votes. If you vote wrong, they'll kill you. Question has come up, should you introduce yourself when calling? And with an individual, I think that's fine. If you're calling your friend John Doe and John, this is Ken Hance, you know, check and see how you're doing. But if you're calling Dillard's to see what time they open and close, you know, the people, they ask some of the people that work and answer the phones. They say, don't waste our time telling us who you are. Just say, what time y'all close? Mm-hmm. You know, make it a quick question and make it pretty fast on whether they can do that. There's also some sleep-deprived cities, the top 10, and that was Norfolk, New Orleans, Detroit. Laredo was the only Texas town that was mentioned, and it was number 8. And that I don't know why it's sleep deprived. In the towns where they got the most sleep, Minneapolis was number one, and I think they had some others that were mostly in the Midwest, where they had
good sleepers there.
They were getting enough sleep, And stupid criminals this week. A guy was. They later determined he had been taking meth, and somebody, he was on a bridge, and somebody said, "I dare you to jump off that bridge," and he did, and jumped in the water, and they had to call the fire department, and fish him out, and then charged him later with some crime, some misdemeanor, but. The last story I'll bring up is that an anchor for a TV station in Schenectady, New York, she gave the news one morning while she was in labor. Her water broke at 4:45, and she went on the air at 6 to give the news, and it was a long time between contractions, but she was in labor at the time. And I get that goes back to Sacagawea, that she had the baby when she was a guide for Lewis and Clark. She had the baby at 6:30 one morning, and they gave her off until noon, and she started guiding them again at noon.
That's a tough woman.
That's tough. Saying of the day: remember, it's better to have one day with a great teacher than 1,000 days just studying on your